people who don't want history to change. And not that we want to change history, but we want to add to it. And then there's the people who are wanting to add, wanting to show what has been hidden. But then there's also people in that mix who are just straight up making stuff up. People get so defensive. This is where they're like, we was kangz. But there is and should be this middle ground between people who are like, it's woke to talk about everything in terms of race. And then the other side of like, actually things have always been talked about in terms of race, it just hasn't been from this angle. Hi, thank you so much for being here with me. I'm Danielle Romero, and on my channel we talk about American identity and family stories. I go through my comments in the hidden, there's like a hidden section where YouTube is basically saying, these are really awful comments and we're going to hide them until you say otherwise. I don't usually have a ton of time to go through those, but every now and then I go through them. Sometimes they're totally normal comments, and other times I'm like, okay, I can see why this one was hidden for review. But one of the kinds of comments that I get is like, we was kangz comment. And if you don't know what that is referring to, it's really like this meme that is supposed to be making fun of Black people for claiming to be descended from a bunch of things that they supposedly are not. I was thinking about, why does it make people so angry to have historical figures be retroactively identified as Black or having African heritage? So stay with me, because we're going to dive into why this hits such a nerve, whether or not we are rewriting history, revising history, or restoring it. There are tons of videos and things out there, people saying that historical figures are Black, like Beethoven and British royalty and all that they might have had African ancestry. And I think for some it feels like an attempt to rewrite history, that this is trying to fit like this modern woke agenda, and they might think this is just a trend. Some people want to make everything about race. But even though I don't think all of those claims are true, and we're going to get to those in particular, I don't think it's about rewriting history. I don't think it's necessarily a trend. We're grappling with this new era of being able to publicly discuss things that we weren't allowed to discuss before. There are examples that do check out. Let's talk about Alexandre Dumas. He wrote The Count of Monte Cristo, The Three Musketeers. He was actually the grandson of an enslaved Haitian woman. He actually openly embraced his Black heritage, but I think this is something that gets skipped over in the narrative, turning him into just a French author, which he is. But it's not like just a French author or just a Black author, but it's this French man with this African heritage. And I think when people rediscover these things, well, we want to talk about it and say, look, here's another instance where we can point to the boxes of being Black or white doesn't hold up. And I love those instances because I think it challenges this idea that, we are just a crayon color. People get so defensive. This is where they're like, we was kangz thing comes up. I think that there is and should be this middle ground between people who are like, it's woke to talk about everything in terms of race. And then the other side of like, actually things have always been talked about in terms of race, it just hasn't been from this angle. You know what I'm saying? So to understand why these claims cause such a strong reaction, I think we have to go back to a time when having Black blood, and I'm saying Black because literally that is how it was described. My great-grandmother was born in Louisiana, and it wasn't until the 1980s, I was born in the 1980s, it wasn't until the 1980s Louisiana's Black blood law was repealed. This was a real law. I'm sure not the only state to have this law, but the Black blood law. This is the one-drop rule law. One Black ancestor, you're Black. Well, what does it mean? What does it matter if you're Black? Well, it would mean not having rights, opportunities, a place in society. So for centuries, anyone with Black ancestry, and Black can be a whole multitude of backgrounds, but what is considered Black, even one Black ancestor, you could be reclassified and your place in society restructured or taken away. So this wasn't just a label, it was a boundary. It meant for a while you couldn't vote, You couldn't own property. You didn't have access to some of the same education, any education, opportunities, a sense of safety. So people with African heritage, especially public figures, what do you think that they did with that? Either hid that part of their identity just to survive, or maybe it was hidden from them, from their family. And that's why over time, a lot of these stories were buried. And, so for many, it was a matter of safety, of survival. But today we have the privilege of digging up these stories. But some people feel like bringing up hidden history is an attack on history itself. It doesn't feel right to me that there was this whole era of, well, things were talked about in race. It was like, are you white or are you black? And now there's just this new era opening up, but we have more access to information, and you're not going to lose all of your rights and property for having black ancestry. And so I think there is this rush of enthusiasm to reclaim and bring to light. But I think in that, people make mistakes, and I think sometimes those are on purpose. I think some of the claims that I've seen of saying, was such and such really black? I'm like, listen, there is such a rich heritage. There are so many people to pull from every group that, like, there's no need to make things up. You know what I'm saying? But I do think it is important that when we see over and over again this like real anger, this vitriol about like, well, you're just trying to make everything black. Case in point, the Babe Ruth video I did. I didn't come out and say Babe Ruth was black. Like that's not what I did. I mean, in the video, I'm like, I'm not saying he's black. But what I'm talking about is building this case for the time that he lived. He lived and played baseball during the time of Jim Crow. It is well documented that he dealt with racial slurs based on how he looked. And does that mean that he is black? No. But what I'm trying to do is point to the time. What was it like to live in this time where a man, he may have had African ancestry, I don't know, but a man who, let's say, didn't have African ancestry is being harassed for looking too African? Well, what do you think it was like for people who clearly were majority African heritage at that time? You know what I mean? And so it's again pointing to this change, this sea change of like, now I can sit here on this couch and tell you, yes, I have African heritage. No, it's not my majority heritage, but I have it, and I'm not going to be lose my right to vote, lose my right to sit in the front row of the bus or whatever. But it wasn't that long ago that was true. And so I think that there is, this thing happening where it's like there's this like colliding of people who don't want history to change. And not that we want to change history, but we want to add to it. And then there's the people who are wanting to add, wanting to show what has been hidden. But then there's also people in that mix who are just straight up making stuff up because it gets a lot of attention. Oh, sorry, that's my printer. Every now and then my printer just like makes a sound. I'm like, I don't know. That kind of stuff always freaks me out. So why does this matter for you though? It makes me think about like our own family story. How many ancestor stories do you know in your family tree? How many stories are kept a secret or are never told that would expand your view of who you are? I think it's a great example for what we're talking about here in our country right now. Our country is the same country. You are still you. I am still me. I don't change with additional knowledge about my background, but it will change how I continue to live in the future. But it doesn't like change who I am. It doesn't fundamentally change our country to say, hey, some of these big historical figures, oh, guess what? They actually did have some African ancestry after all. And I think that's a cool thing to uncover. And I think if it's there, we should talk about it. But it's not like we're going back and we're just like rewriting everything. It doesn't have to, it's not always that extreme thing, right? There's nuance in the middle. So when we see these debates about Black ancestry and famous figures, I think we're witnessing something much bigger happening. There's a desire to connect, a desire to share what has been hidden, and to do that is new. It's not a thing that has been available to do. And I think we have to be careful though, because again, you don't want to get sucked up into a thing where it's like, it just feels good to be like, look all the history we're uncovering, and it's like, and it's not real, you know, it's not authentic. But I think if we keep uncovering hidden stories that are true, how much better we are to know the truth, right? The truth will set us free.
Over the last 2 years, I've been telling the stories that often get ignored. But lately, I've been facing an uphill battle behind the scenes of each video. My videos are getting flagged by YouTube when all I'm doing is sharing real history. If these stories have ever resonated with you or given you a new perspective, grab some Be a Good Ancestor merch and help me keep this channel going. Check out nytonashville.com.